This is the second introductory alphabet lesson for Biblingo. What you see in front of you is the oldest Hebrew writing ever found. It's called the Kirbet Kayafa inscription, or ostrakon. An ostrakon is a small piece of pottery with writing on it. In this case, this dates to the 9th or 10th century BC. As you can see, the letters look very different from what the modern Hebrew alphabet is. But you can see some similarities. For example, the first letter on the first line is an aleph, you can see here. And that looks quite similar to an upside down A. There's been a lot of debate about what exactly this ostrakon says, but the real ostrakon is much harder to decipher. You can read more about some of the different interpretations on Wikipedia. Now let's look at some of the consonants you'll learn in this lesson. The first is the aleph, just like what you saw. We have chosen to transliterate the aleph using the IPA symbol for the glottal stop, which is the sound that it makes, at least in Biblical Hebrew. This is because the normal way of transliterating it is very close to another letter you'll learn later on in this lesson, the ayin. In order to avoid confusion, we've chosen to use the IPA symbol. Next, we come to another Begad Kafat letter. Remember, Begad Kafat letters are pronounced differently whether it has a dot or not in it. And the dot, again, is called a dagesh. For this Begad Kafat letter, it's actually pronounced the exact same with or without the dagesh in modern Hebrew. But in Biblical Hebrew, the variant without the dagesh, r, will sound quite different. Maybe something like an R or an L. So you'll have to get used to this sound. Next, we have the vav. Vav is similar to yod in that it sometimes is used as a vowel letter, and it's pronounced w or v. W in biblical and v in modern. Then we have shin. Shin, you'll notice, has a dot of its own in the letter in the top right-hand corner. This will be important to remember to distinguish it from another letter you'll learn later on. Next, we come to kaf. Kaf is special because it's both a Begad Kafat letter and a Kam Nifatz letter, which means it can be pronounced in two different ways, either as k or ch, and it also has a final letter, as you can see written on the far left-hand side. Next, we have ayin. Ayin is what's called a pharyngeal consonant. Pharyngeal consonants are something that we don't have in English, so it'll sound pretty weird. In modern Hebrew, they've pretty much lost this sound, and it isn't really pronounced. But in Biblical Hebrew, it's pronounced deep in the throat, like ah. We've chosen to use the typical transliteration symbol for ayin, the small c. Now we'll learn some of the vowels. First, the cholam. This vowel is the only vowel written above the letter. As you can see, the dot appears in the top left-hand corner of the letter, and it's an O sound. Next, we have kamatz. Kamatz is a T written below the letter. In this case, we've also chosen to use the IPA symbol to transliterate this vowel. It's pronounced aw in Biblical Hebrew and ah in modern. Next, we have tzere. This is represented by two dots underneath, and it's a similar sound to the sagol that you've already learned, but it's e instead of e. This distinction isn't found in modern Hebrew, in which case the tzere and the sagol are both pronounced e. Next, we have the hirik vowel. This is a single dot underneath the letter, and it's pronounced e. Finally, here are some similar letters that you'll want to take note of. We'll start on the right-hand side. The yod and the vav look quite similar, except that the vav is written a little bit longer. The two letters are actually confused quite a bit in ancient manuscripts. Next, we have zayin and vav. The difference is that the zayin has a longer stroke in the top. And then we have bet and kaf. The only difference between bet and kaf is the bottom right-hand corner of the letter. Kaf is rounded and Beit is sharper. And finally, we have Resh and final Kaf. The Resh is rounded in the top right-hand corner, and it doesn't go below the line. The Kaf is sharp on the top right-hand corner, and it goes below the line. Stay tuned for the next alphabet lesson, where you'll see the oldest biblical Hebrew text ever found.